All right, you are now tuned in to the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmylee Velez. I am here with Gabe, Heck, Manny, Goose, and Joel, helping ourselves. In this episode, we have special guest Joel Berrocal. The crew discusses empathy and compassion for others. We talk about earthquake recovery efforts, the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce, the role of government, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from John Connolly and Albert Schweitzer. Guys, if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. Kicking things off, Joel, thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me, man. Giving me the platform. My second time on, so
absolutely
I feel like a vet now.
Yeah. So he was on episode 121 titled Impact, and at that point we were talking about hurricane relief in Puerto Rico, and obviously you gave a little bit of background on what you do and your role with the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce. And that was a very successful show. And in the meanwhile, we actually linked up with the Blessed Lifestyle brand, and part of these efforts where a portion of the proceeds we made of sales gets donated to the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce. We made these Bendecido shirts. We linked up in the summer for Puerto Rican Day here in Bristol Borough. And we had a little table. He had the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce stuff, the information stuff, and we had the shirts. It was a good deal. It was awesome. Thank you for that collaboration. We have fun doing that. But fast forwarding, and for those of you all who have not yet heard episode 121, I highly suggest you listen up on that. It's a great show. But catch us up on who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So. Well, I wish we didn't keep meeting like this. It seems like
sure.
I'm only on the show when there's a disaster in Puerto Rico.
Right.
What a disaster.
I mean, so my title, the organization is the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce. My title is the Southeast Pennsylvania president. So normally, our normal functions are just like that of any other chamber of commerce.
Sure.
So for the most part.
Sure.
Most of my focus has been... I've been working with businesses on the island and on the mainland U.S. and really trying to bring them to U.S. markets. But obviously, when these disasters come around, we go into full-on disaster relief mode, and that's kind of where we've been for the past couple weeks now, as you guys been seeing in the news.
Yeah. No, for sure. So for effort purposes, can you explain a little bit about what the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce does for when we have events like this, but in an effort to elaborate, because you did mention, unfortunately, we're meeting every time there's a disaster, but when there's no disasters, what's going on?
Yeah, like I was saying, most of my work is primarily working with a lot of startups, a lot of cultures in the agriculture a lot of businesses in the agricultural sectors, and pretty much trying to bring their products and services to U.S. markets and kind of expand their businesses to things that they didn't know were possible. So we help with that, and really we do a lot of work in trying to be, going back to the relief efforts, trying to be more proactive than reactive, where a disaster comes and you go right into reaction mode, where we're doing things to be more proactive. We're doing things working with infrastructure, renewable energy, sustainability, those type of things, so that when these disasters do happen, and they will continue to happen, unfortunately, the island is in a better position to withstand those type of things. They can take the blow a little bit better.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where most of our work is focused on.
Yeah.
But now it's really, at this point, we are in full-on disaster relief mode. So it's pretty much been straight up fundraising at this point. So that's pretty much been our focus the past month.
Gotcha. All right, so part of this, I wanted to, we titled it "Helping Ourselves," right? Mm-hmm. Because there's this, sometimes there's a confusion as to Puerto Rico's role in our country,
right?
And so we titled this "Helping Ourselves" because it's that's pretty much what we're doing here. A little bit of that, I want to talk about empathizing with Puerto Rico, and what does empathy look to you and compassion mean to you?
I mean, to put it as simply and as bluntly as possible, it means giving a damn.
Yeah.
Simple. We as people, and, to no fault of our own, is, most of us are so laser focused on the day to day, paying the mortgage, putting food on the table, that you don't stop and man, how's Jimmylee doing? What does he need help with? What does Miguel need help with? We're just so laser focused on our own stuff. So sometimes you have to keep it in the forefront of your mind to, keep your community, the people around you, in your consciousness when you're going about your day to day, and always keep that mentality there. And just look to make the world a better place than you left it. That's one of my favorite quotes. I live by that quote. I love it. So, and you always go by that mentality, you're going to do a lot of good.
Yes.
So that's just how I look at it.
I love it. Mm-hmm. I love it. Extending that hand too, right?
Exactly.
Extending that hand. And here's what's crazy is doing it when you have the resources and or the ability to, right? There's so many people who have the resources and the ability to stretch out their hand and empathize with somebody or bring their compassion to a level where it is actually helping someone, and they don't, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, dude, I don't want to go to the grave thinking like I could have did so much more.
Well, one of my biggest pet peeves, the phrase that I just can't stand is the phrase "someone should." I'm somebody, you're somebody. Yeah. So I always keep that in my mind. So if I see a problem, I don't think, somebody should fix that. My mindset goes to, how can I fix that?
Yeah.
Let me find a solution to that.
Yes.
Either I can do it myself, or I'm going to find out who can,
Yeah,
it's almost to my detriment. I kind of put that stuff on myself, but that's just how, that's just how I operate,
Yeah.
So, and I think the world would be a better place if a lot more people use that mindset in their day to day.
They're solution oriented rather than complaint oriented.
Yeah. What good does that do us?
No, exactly.
Doesn't do us any good.
I mean, one thing that it does initially, and then it should just stop there, is that it recognizes something's wrong, right? So even if it's a complaint, at least you're recognizing there's something wrong. You notice something. But after that first even complaint, it's like, all right, so then what are you doing?
Where do we go from here?
Right, now where do we go? And I don't know what it is about sometimes this human experience that we're here doing right now, but sometimes we do like to lean on the negativity, and and there's a lot of studies that psychologically sometimes it makes you feel better if you put someone else down because of all the detriments and things that's going on in your life. It kind of, you think that it rises you while you pushing someone else down.
Absolutely.
But if you're right, if we constantly think of solution, ideas, solution-oriented ideas, and how we can address certain situations, it doesn't have to be every time a disaster happens, right? It can be a continual thing.
Exactly.
Right? There's little things, right? This isn't something you just put a Band-Aid on. Obviously,
No.
it's catastrophic. So, but there are things that you can put your little Band-Aid on. It only takes one person to help.
The thing I noticed in a lot of my work is that for a lot of people who aren't willing to put in the work like I am, it's easier to say, here's that check for $100 or whatever. I've done the work.
Right. Sure.
Instead of really thinking, this is a long-term play.
Yeah.
People don't want to roll their sleeves up and get dirty.
Right.
So for a lot of people, the majority of people, not everybody's built for this type of stuff.
Sure.
But that their mentality is, let me cut this check. My conscience is clear. I'll move on.
Right.
Out of my mind.
Right.
And that's a trend I've noticed a lot.
Yeah.
So.
What's crazy about that though? But that approach is not just to things like this, right?
Oh, yeah.
It goes to just regular day life. When you missed out on, maybe a family member's life or whatever it was, you're like, oh, I'm just going to buy them something, right? And it's just that weird mentality that we have, thinking that money's just going to solve it. And it's not. And it's like, there's people who need a hug. There's people who need someone to talk to, right? There's people who just need, their healing is talking to another family member that they hadn't had the ability to communicate with in over a week. Because people think right away money, right? And obviously, the money we need to raise money. That's part of the solution. But the thing to remember is that it's part of the solution. And it doesn't solve everything, but it's a huge factor. But for the folks out there, who may not have all, the means to donate, I do want to get into things how else they can help. So what from going from our episode 121 to episode 183, which we're recording now, approximately 60 episodes in there, right? So it's over a year. Mm-hmm. What are some of the key takeaways that you were able to benefit from, lessons learned from the hurricane relief that you're applying here to the earthquake relief?
Well, the biggest thing that we learned the hard way, unfortunately, was not to rely. You can't rely on the government.
Yeah.
When Maria happened, we were kind of waiting to see kind of almost like waiting for them to take the lead in the recovery, and it never happened. And then by the time everybody realized, damn, we gotta get to work.
Yeah.
Time had passed. So this time, it was like when the earthquakes happened, it was like a switch. Like we flicked a switch, and I started reaching out to all my contacts, all my organizations that we had built relationships with during Maria, and we all just got to work quick.
Yeah.
Not to say that not to make light of this situation of the earthquakes, but the damage has been more concentrated than Maria. So, for lack of a better term, it's been easier.
Sure.
Because we have communication, we have, supermarkets that are stocked down there, and for the most part, you guys remember how all the stuff and water bottles we were sending down for Maria. This time, we're literally just sending monetary donations because we have the organizations and the community organizers and stuff who can go to the supermarket and they can better assess what's needed anyway than we can, you know? So, and logistically, it just doesn't make sense to spend $20 to send a box of goods where that $20 in shipping can be used at a Walmart and go a long way.
Yeah.
So that's been the biggest difference, is just that we knew we just kind of took the bull by the horns and got to work immediately and didn't wait around for anybody.
So for those of you, I'm sure you're aware, but I'll just say, the earthquake situation in Puerto Rico was a 6.4 magnitude earthquake that rumbled across the island of Puerto Rico, killing at least one, knocking out power to virtually the entire island of over more than 3 million. What is crazy about that? And it's the magnitude is totally different than what the hurricane was, but how much we rely on power and electricity, right?
Absolutely.
And that's part of your efforts, right? In clean energy, right? And these kinds of things that will, I guess, almost provide a solution already for when these kinds of things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a thing where before Maria, their electrical grid was antiquated and needed to be redone. This is before Maria. Now we're talking after Maria, and now we got the earthquakes on top of that to just keep piling it on. And I don't know the exact number, but the reports were in the past, it was about a total of about 1,800 earthquakes. Is the total number with a few significant ones.
Right. So
the problem is too, like it was to most of the like the epicenter was in a real concentrated area to the southwest part of the island. But we don't know the long-term effects that it's going to have. So you know the buildings that were destroyed, but you have the ones that are standing, but might not be have no structural integrity anymore. So we don't know the effects throughout the entire island that this whole earthquake is actually going to have in the long term.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were saying about the grid is solar is such a big priority for us, and the biggest thing that I like, the solution I like is kind of microgrids throughout the island. So it's not one big network that when it crashes the whole thing goes out, where you have small grids that where things happen you can isolate it and solve these issues a little bit easier. So the solutions are there, the resources aren't quite there. The biggest hurdle to to redoing their electrical system is dealing with the bureaucratic red tape. It's a government just impedes process, unfortunately. Without them getting in the way, we could probably get a lot done a lot faster.
Heck yeah.
You know how that goes.
For sure. And from your experience, and obviously you're in communication with folks over there, what are some of the most important items that are currently needed?
Items, I mean, all the basic necessities. I mean, like I said, there's people who, you look at their house and it looks fine, but there's that mental block you have now that you don't want to go into that. It's that fear. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So people are now living in tents in front of their houses. So things like tents, inflatable beds, blankets, toiletries, all the normal stuff, food, water. Something that we're really coming across that I'm getting a lot is things for diabetics, things like Glucerna, things you don't even think about that just become a need. Feminine hygiene products, that type of stuff. So nothing out of the ordinary, but every day we're finding, when you think you got it nailed down and you think, okay, we need this, and then so-and-so comes, well, hey, we need this too. And then you're like, oh, geez, I forgot all about that, So every day we're learning and we're kind of compiling, we keep compiling a list and getting feedback from our contacts on the island. But for the most part, a lot of the same things that we were using, that we were shipping during Maria. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have any friends or relatives that were directly affected there?
Not in the areas of the earthquakes and the epicenters, but the whole island's feeling them.
Sure.
So like I said, it's more for a lot of them. It's more the mental thing where, you're so stressed out for the earthquakes, you don't know when the next one's going to come. You finally lay down, you're about to fall asleep, and then here comes another one, and it's just you can't get a good night rest. So the mental health on the island needs to be of the utmost importance. Unfortunately, these are people who still suffering from PTSD from Maria, and now you're dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. It's so to answer your question, speaking with a lot of the family there, it's mental issues that seem to be the biggest concern on their parts. You just never know with these structures.
It's wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but my point in asking that though was because a lot of times people think, oh, the connection is, it's because a family member of X, Y, and Z was directly affected, with losing power and whatever, and that's the only reason why they're doing it. And this is the point I wanted to make, where this is how much the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce does care, and it's the point into why we need to continually to support organizations like this, because they feel the pain. That's why I want to talk about the empathy and the compassion and helping ourselves. It's almost like you feel the pain for somebody, even though it's not like a direct relative or something. Absolutely. And that shows true empathy. It's like you're empathizing with that person, and the mental health has to be up to par, man, because if it's not, there's a lot of other issues that come with that, right? Just the stability of just a single household, right? And the mental health is not there. That's not good for anyone, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I was talking about when it came to like the monetary thing versus sometimes someone just wants a conversation. They find comfort in words, and then it's a time for everyone to also reflect. You got to think basic necessities like a water, or hygiene, feminine hygiene products. It's like things where it's like you take for granted that you have on just think about deodorant, even just deodorant. You know what I mean? It's like basic necessities. It's like, oh my gosh, it brings you back and humbles you.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a scary way.
Yeah, and one thing, a cool thing that we kind of put together is. One of the things, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, that a lot of my work is working with Puerto Rican businesses and bringing their products to U.S. markets. Sure. So I work with a lot of Puerto Rican tobacco companies, a lot of cigar companies and stuff. So I came up with an idea that I reached out to all of them. Something to think about if you guys are going and donating to these camps and stuff, bring some cigars with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not for everybody, but sure. I there's going to be a couple people there. You know what? All this nonsense I'm dealing with, I'm gonna light one up. I'm gonna light up a cigar.
Right.
Nothing more relaxing than that.
Right.
So something simple outside the box that we kind of put together, and I don't know. It was a pretty cool thing. Something I'm into, and if somebody can get some enjoyment out of that, if one person enjoys it, and maybe makes their day a little bit better from all the nonsense and sleeping in tents and dealing with floods and landslides and earthquakes. If he could take an hour to smoke a cigar,
right?
I'm all for it. You know?
That's cool. And it's that thinking. It's that that thinking out outside the box, that makes things work and helps the situation. What about schooling, right? So can you? I don't know if you know any of the background with the schools, but obviously they're affected, and it's I guess the number that I got was about 20% of the schools are currently open. Can you speak a little on that, what the kids are doing? And
yeah, I mean they in certain areas they've gone back to school like normal. In the more affected areas, a lot of them have been doing their schooling outside in tents, and they get the big tents and do class that way. But I mean, you look at the thing, it's these schools, the vast majority of the schools built on the island are not up to snuff when it comes to earthquake. Yeah. They're built, everything over there is built up to hurricane code, obviously,
sure.
But it hasn't been something that affected the island in over a century. So It's something they just neglected when they were building it. It wasn't right, but it's just what it was, I guess, to cut costs or whatever. So you got to think these kids, eventually there's going to be a time when they're going to go back to their schools, the actual buildings and stuff like that. So you'll have that constant worry. I'm in the school, who knows how safe it really is.
Right.
But then when the school day's over, it's like you're still dealing with the stuff at your house. You still don't have a house to go into. You're still, I'm done school. All right, let me go back to my tent and do my homework. How well these kids are gonna, how well are they gonna be able to concentrate on their studies and so worried about all the other nonsense they got going on. So it's a really sad thing, and I don't have a better answer for you in terms of when will they'll have a sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
We just don't know. It's just this is unprecedented.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's amazing too. Like you think about as an adult. Like I'm thinking about how I'm. Man, if that really happened to me, how I would handle it. Mm-hmm. Mentioning the schools, I'm trying to think about how do the kids view it, right? I mean, that's like an even crazier thought. And going back to mental health, if again like the leader of the house seems to be losing it emotionally, what's the kid supposed to think? Where's the kid supposed to find that that ground?
I think of the kids like my daughter's age. My daughter's 7, and you've only been on this earth 7 years, and you've had to deal with Maria. You had to deal with the earthquake now. As a parent, you're going to try to be as strong as possible, but eventually you're going to show cracks dealing with this stuff. So it's going to have an effect on these kids. So we don't know those long-term effects. So that's why, like I said earlier, mental health is we need to make sure that these kids are getting the help, man. Like you said, sometimes it's just a matter of talking to them and stuff and get an understanding of where their minds are at, because these could have really detrimental effects in the future moving forward,
So for the people who evacuated and had the ability to leave the island, right? Mm-hmm. What is it like? I mean, what can we imagine that they're going to come back and they got to go back to the island eventually? What are they going to expect? I mean, do they have to wait to kind of their house gets inspected to see if it's even safe living quarters?
Yeah, well, you got to understand statistically, when people leave the island for these type of reasons, they typically don't come back. So now it's a thing where they basically came here to the States with whatever they had on their back, and now they got to make it work. A lot of times when they leave is because they have nothing to lose, because it's the situation over there is not like it is here in terms of, you have a house, you're a homeowner, something happens, you got your insurance, you'll be taken care of, your house will be rebuilt, and let's keep it moving.
Yeah. It's
not the situation over there. You got people who built houses on land that their pop's land, or so their pops had two acres of land that, and, all right, I'm gonna build house. All right, go ahead, go build it over there. No permits, no nothing. You can't get insurance in that. And even the people that do have insurance typically don't have earthquake endorsements on their policies.
Right.
So it's just a situation where they're like, I lost it all. I'm just gonna go start over, and then they don't come back, and then that kind of makes the economic issue on the island even worse. So it's a snowball effect there.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
All right. So I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the role of government, right? In your opinion, what's the role of government in all these efforts, and why do you think we struggle to help ourselves?
In my opinion, when it relates to the relief efforts in Puerto Rico, my opinion of government is they need to get out of the way and let us get to work like we've been doing. They've already shown blatant incompetence, corruption with everything going on. It's better. Don't make it harder for us. For us doing the work. Just, like if you're gonna do what you're gonna do, let us just stay out of our way. Sure. We're getting stuff done more effectively, and quicker, more efficiently, just working. So in my opinion, they have a role, but it hasn't. They really haven't done what they're supposed to do in these two last disasters, unfortunately. So I think it's more important to rely on the private sector and the nonprofits.
So in jumping off that, in your opinion, what is the diaspora's role in the recovery effort?
Well, you got to understand, there's more Puerto Ricans in the diaspora than there is on the island.
Yeah.
So, you saw it during Maria when that island was it was shut down. No communication, no nothing. So us in the diaspora, we got to work, and we were able to get supplies over there more efficiently than the government could. The government had trailers stuck at the docks, and we were getting stuff to the island, to the people, where it needed to go in a much more efficient way. An aspect that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to the diaspora is we're the island's biggest ally because we have representation in Congress and we can vote for president. So there's a lot of power in that. Yeah. And when you talk about places like here, like this part of the country, Philly, New York, Chicago, the Florida areas, the elected officials listen to us. Yeah. Because they know how much, they know there's a lot of power in numbers. So that is probably the biggest aspect of the diaspora in relation to the island and how we can help and make our voices heard, and advocate for them.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics between Puerto Ricans on the island and us here?
Sure, yeah. So one thing that, if you really know the relationship, is that Puerto Ricans here, like all of us, sure. We unfortunately we're kind of looked at as like second class Puerto Ricans, not real Puerto Ricans. Yeah. Where something on the people on the island, a thing they don't really understand is that most of us are here at some point or another because of the conditions on the island. There's a disconnect where they think, since we never lived there, we don't understand the issues. Sure. We understand the issues perfectly. Right. It's just that we might have different solutions to those problems. We're both in agreement of the problems on the island. Sure. It's just that there's a disconnect on what the best course of action is from there. Yeah. So it's something we continue to work for and try to communicate and educate people on the island, but this is something that goes back a century, Yeah, so it's tough to, because the overall ideology, and not to get too much into, the status question with Puerto Rico, that we can spend a whole nother podcast on that. But there's always been a mentality among Puerto Ricans in the northeast part of the country that they're more for independence of the island, and a lot on the island are more for the statehood aspects. So that's kind of where the disconnect comes. Gotcha. It's a complicated thing. Like we could talk all day about that.
Yeah, for sure. Joel, I got a question for you. Is the disconnect because the Puerto Ricans here trying to help aren't physically there, and they don't really grasp what's happening. Is there kind of a resentment, like, hey man, I'm glad you're trying to help me, but you really don't know what it's like to be here?
And that's exactly it. There's that resentment. There's that, you've never lived here. It's more so, not so much the Puerto Ricans that left the island that came here. It's the ones like us who were born and raised here that you don't know. You never lived here. You don't know what we're going through day to day. And like I said, that's where it's a disconnect, because we can agree of the issues. It's just the solutions that we differ.
So do and I know some of the family looks at me or my brother as a second generation here, like almost like a silver spoon ish. Like you don't know what it's like to struggle. Like it's because I know the opportunities on the island aren't as plentiful as they are here, and they look at like, man, you had it easy type thing. And I think that you're right. That is a huge disconnect from us and them.
A lot of the ones who born and raised there who never came here think that it's that the streets are made of gold type of deal, that you come over here, it's the most beautiful thing in the world, and you don't know what we're going through type of deal, where we know that's not the case, but it's just something we continue to try to educate and but you get in those, you got your political camps, and it's tough to change people's mindset. So we just keep doing what we're doing, and and try to affect change in a good way.
With all that's going on, I know you post a lot on social media. You're obviously a very involved father, but you also involve your kids into what you're doing. With all these efforts, how does one set the tone for things like this, or talk to kids about what's going on and the importance of their role, because they're the next generation, right? And so you want them to follow suit. When I'm not here, I hope you're eventually you can take over. You can also do these kinds of efforts. For a lot of people that are listening and they have kids, and I'm not just speaking about helping ourselves with this Puerto Rico situation. I'm just saying maybe just in a more general way. How does one set the tone for their household?
Yeah, just that's a big thing for me.
Yeah,
is just leading by example, because our kids are watching. Of course, they're watching. So it's kind of going back to what I had said. My favorite quote that said, leave the world a little bit better than you found it.
Yes,
I live by that mentality, especially when I know my daughter's watching.
Yeah,
something as simple as when I'm taking her to school in the morning, I see a piece of trash on the floor. Yeah, I didn't put it there, but I'm gonna pick it up.
Right.
It goes solutions. There's a problem.
Right.
I fixed it.
Right.
She sees that.
Right.
And I see it rubbing off on her. And these are the future. These are people that got to take care of us moving forward. So you just try to maintain that example and just continue to. I try to continue to maintain and live a purpose-driven life. And it's gonna she's a sponge at this point. It's gonna bounce off of her, and hopefully she sees that and continues to build on what I've shown her over the years. Just pretty simple.
I love it. All right, awesome. So if people wanted to help with the recovery efforts, what are some of the options?
So obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased to our relief fund, because sure. I could vouch for it. And accountability is my biggest thing. So I know for a fact where every dollar goes to our fund, and I know with our relief fund there's no we don't use any money for overhead or anything like that. That's funded from other sources. So everything donated goes to the island, and I personally oversee most of it. We partnered up with a company called Purple Cookie Tours LLC. So a good shout out to Sarah. So if you're planning a vacation on an island or anything like that, they're going to donate a portion of all proceeds to our efforts on the island.
Wow,
so
cool.
It's a thing where if you were going to go to the island, might as well help the island while you're there.
Absolutely.
Too. So it's something pretty cool that I'm pretty excited about. But overall, if you're looking to help, essentially the biggest way you can help is with a monetary donation. There's not much need for any type of supplies or anything like that. It's more of a thing where we're sending money over to people we have relationships with. Now we're just blindly sending money over to the island.
Sure.
These are organizations and community organizers we have relationships with. Another thing to consider too, if you're weary of organizations, is just buy Puerto Rican products.
Yeah.
Go online. There's a lot of great websites. Brands of Puerto Rico, company called Libros 787. It's all books.
Yeah.
It helps support the economy that way. These people still have to run their businesses. They still have to, keep everything going. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I mean, if anybody's looking to help and they have any questions, I'm on I'm on all social media. They feel free to reach out and we can go from there.
Yeah. What's your Instagram handle?
It's all my name. It's Joel Berrocal. Just search my name, you'll find me on all of them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it, folks. We like to wrap our episodes up with quotes, and the first one is by John Connolly. There's nobility in compassion, a beauty in empathy, a grace in forgiveness. And the second one by Albert Schweitzer. Serve and show compassion and the will to help others. Helping ourselves. In this episode, we have special guest Joel Berrocal. We cover topics that range from empathy and compassion for others. We talk about earthquake relief, the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce, the role of government, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from John Connolly and Albert Schweitzer. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.